Alright, so we're back for our third installment of our brain dumps. Hopefully you guys are getting something out of this and this is working. Remember, you can always subscribe to my page to be able to see these all the time. Alright, so last I left you, we had won the American Revolution and we became our own country. Now for the next 3 days, we're going to talk about the Constitution and our new government. We're going to break it up into 3 parts, and so today we're going to talk about the Federalist, the Anti-Federalist, this hand, Great Compromise, and the Three-Fifths Compromise. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're a new country, and we need to figure out what we're going to do with it, and we got to write ourselves a constitution, and we got to write ourselves our first government. Our first government is called the Articles of Confederation. Now, under the Articles of Confederation, there were certain things that we said our federal government could and could not do. The first thing they could do is print money and get into treaties and also create a post office. What they couldn't do was they could not tax the people, could not regulate trade, did not have an executive branch or a judicial branch. So let me explain. So first thing is that the federal government could not tax. Under the king, he was taxing us, trying to take care of that war debt, but he was doing it without representation or giving us any kind of say in it at all, and he just taxed us. So we didn't want to have that when we had our own country. The trading part of it, we didn't want our federal government regulating our trade because the king was regulating us, telling us who and who we could not trade with, and we didn't like that either, so we didn't want our federal government to be able to do that. And then finally, we did not want one person, the executive branch, to be able to control us, and we did not want them to be able to judge us. These are 2 things that were happening under the king. The king was the executive part of it, and the judicial was him sending us to the courts and putting us in jail unjustly. And finally, the last thing deals with voting. Each state would be equal and get 1 vote. All right? So these were the Articles of Confederation, what the federal government could and could not do. The last part about it, which is the hand right here, the palm of the hand, which is the strongest part, which was the part we're going to keep of the Articles of Confederation, which is the Northwest Ordinance, NO. And this decided that if 60,000 people were in a territory, you became a state. This is the only part that we're going to keep. All right? Now, this is our first government. We have a thing called Shays' Rebellion that happens. And this shows that this is too weak. So the Articles of Federation is too weak, so we need a new government. Well, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists are going to get together and decide what they're going to do with it. So over here in the Federalists wanted to create this thing called the U.S. Constitution under Madison and Hamilton. And they're going to write the Federalist Papers to persuade people for the U.S. Constitution. However, George Mason and Patrick Henry want a Bill of Rights added to protect individual rights. All right? So we have the Feds who want the U.S. Constitution as is, and the Anti-Federalists who want a Bill of Rights added to the U.S. Constitution before they sign it. When they finally do, we get it ratified, and we have our Constitution, which is going to be the U.S. Constitution, which we have today. All right. After that, we have to decide what we're going to do about representation. And this one was reps for states, and this one was reps for slaves. So how are we going to do this? So first of all, let's talk over here. Over here we have small states, large states. Small states said, I want 1 vote for each state. Large states said, let's base it on population. Well, they got together and came up with a great compromise. And this is the system that we have right now in the legislative system, which is the small states created a Senate, which we're going to have 2 people, which is equal. So 2 people from each state be senators. And then we have a House of Representatives that's based on population. And that's what we have. So the 2 combine together and we get the great compromise. And then finally, for representation for slaves, the North and the South. Well, the North thought that slaves were property, while the South wanted to count them as people. They got together and came up with a 3/5 compromise where every 5 slaves equals 3 people, and that's how we got representation for slaves. So here we go. This is your brain dump for the first part of the Constitution. So later on, you're going to get your chance to do your very own. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and we'll see how much you know.